somebody was here, was an artist, I don't know if she's still here, and she mentioned about simply having dialogue with the technicians, and this, in my experience, solves a lot of the problems in advance. Just having a dialogue with the artist, asking them their desires, what they expect from me, and understanding if I can first provide them with what they desire and ask for, or if I can't explain it clearly to them, why not? And usually if I get an opportunity to do that first, we solve tons of problems that can become technical or can just be even psychological for the artist. And this job that I have now kind of just came about by my relationship with some friends, and I have a good technical ability to figure things out, and usually I just say yes, okay, we'll figure it out, let's do it. So this is sometimes, I think, a good skill to have, just say yes, even if you don't know how to do it. So many jobs I took having no clue how to do the job. I just said yes, I'll figure it out. And given the amount of time and a little bit of expertise, you can figure things out. And if the people have a confidence in you and your approach, then that confidence kind of gets reflected back to you, and you feel like, yeah, you know, I actually can do this, I will figure this out. And that also solves a lot of the problems, just starting. If I have the opportunity to solve a problem and I say, yeah, you know, I will attempt to solve this problem, then this also gets a lot of the hurdles out of the way of my own psyche, thinking, oh, maybe I don't know how to do this, or so many things in my mind can get in the way of me actually solving a problem in the moment. And this particular job that I have now is one of those situations where I just said, yeah, I think we can do this. And many of the engineers that I worked with, or they consider themselves engineers in live sound, and they don't want to try new things a lot of the times. They just want to get paid, basically. They just want to get paid and don't want to lose their position, and they're in fear of making something new, so they don't try new things. So I had an opportunity to make a vocal system, and my friends, they were working on Beyonce's crew for many years, and I was just on a canoe trip, actually. And they said, hey, where are you at? You're nearby. Can you bring your rig over? We have this problem. We want her to, she needs a vocal effects. Okay, I'll come. So I came with just a Pro Tool system. They thought they knew exactly what the problem was, and okay, this is what we needed, and we bring the system over. And once we got talking to what was actually desired, she wanted a system like, she asked, well, why do we spend so much time in the studio making these sounds, and then when we get to the show, we can never use them? I don't understand why this doesn't exist when we spend all this effort and all this money and all this time. And the reality is sometimes there's, you know, when you work with an artist like this that's so creative and so on top of their game, they don't allow much opportunity for a mistake to occur or for you to fix things in the moment. So you have to have like a couple things up your sleeve. Like, this distortion doesn't work, well, how about this distortion? Or this distortion? Or we do this and this, and you gotta do those things in like 10 seconds, where their attention goes away onto things that are more important, video or something like this, they spend much more time on. So when I had come into the rehearsals, we thought we were gonna take a certain approach, and we used a Pro Tool system, but then we made one effect, and there was no way to change to the second effect. Immediately it was a failure. Everything we thought was the solution was immediately a failure as soon as we got into the scenario. So then we had, okay, this won't work, we need another software. And then we got 2 songs. We had the ability to do 2 songs, and we kind of milked that for a little while. Did gigs like this, just operating 2 songs with a delay and some simple effects. And then I went back to my other job, took a long break, and she didn't have much work. So I went back to my other job, and then I got a call before the Super Bowl to go on the tour. And I decided, I don't think I'll go on the tour, I'm committed with this other job. some situations occurred and they allowed me to have some freedom there. So I revisited the situation. And now we're about to do a tour, and we have 16 songs that they want to make exactly like the record. And I'm not allowed to listen to the record because it's not supposed to be released. So I can't listen to the record. I can't have the artist rehearse with me. There's no way for me to test any of the sounds or to see if any of this works. And you have like the people who make the budget, and they give you a little budget so that you can build the system. And then we have to start, but we have to provide results. So eventually I got somebody to give me an iPad or a little iPod that we would rehearse with, and I took all the equipment and I just went into my hotel room and I put one headphone in here, the other headphone, and I use my own voice and I'm singing. Okay, does it sound close enough that I would have the confidence to present all of this in the moment and say, okay, let's do a show? So we had to get ready in this kind of sense that I didn't know if it would be a failure, I didn't know if it would work, but I had already said yes, and I needed to come up with some kind of results. So I got confident enough and enough things in my pocket and that I could approach, and if something's wrong, I can have an answer as to why. And I knew what was desired of me. So we implemented maybe, 12 songs. Once we got onto the stage, we had some problems like latency, like you have to send, the microphone comes directly to me, goes through my system, it comes in digitally, so we don't do any kind of conversion. It comes into me digitally, and then it gets sent out to front of house. The mixer and the monitor engineer, he needs a separate blend because he needs a wet and dry. The front of house doesn't need to deal with a wet and dry. It's another element that he has to think about. So all these little nuances arose as we implemented it into like our whole ecosystem of the show. And we had to come up with ways that we can also work together and communicate together, because it's the main part of the show. If something fails, what do we have for a failure? What do we do if we lose a microphone? What do we do if the monitor engineer has a problem? Can he communicate to me? I'm at front of house. And we have 30 seconds of delay on the PA system. All these little nuances have to be taken care of so that the artist can still perform and think and not even think, not be in their thoughts, completely be in the performance is the best option for us as a technician. If the artist is completely in their performance, then we're doing a good job. If they're thinking, there's probably a problem that we need to fix. So things like we had to make distortion in front of the PA system with the distortion on the effect, which creates tons of harmonics in whatever's going into the microphone. But simple things like communicating the truth of how things operate in the moment helped so much. Like when we were on stage and we have fans blowing in for hair to be blowing all the time, so there's no hair in her face, and there's a band behind her, and then she's trying to sing, and why does it sound like shit? And we had to say, okay, well, usually when you're in a studio, you put distortion on your voice, there's a recording of you, and you're not fighting a fan, there's no fan sound coming into your microphone, there's no band coming into your microphone, there's no PA system, there's no other nuance of noise in the studio except your voice that's already pre-recorded, and then we put those effects on. But that simple little bit of communication, direct communication with the artist, like she was saying before, helped solve so many of these problems, because at that point she understood the technicalities of the issue and didn't push the issue any further. It's like, okay, well then let's put that sound in the box and we won't worry about it. If it becomes a critical issue and we need to do something with it, then we'll deal with it later. And we moved on through the creative process. And then the stuff kind of worked. It started to work, and it started to develop a system and then look at it more like an instrument, because somehow we are, he said something very interesting that this I wrote it down, Professor speaking. he said, human society is irreducibly cultural, and art and its expression in culture is a fundamental right. And I thought about how important those things are when we are technicians serving art. And we're using things like technology as our instrument. Technology becomes our instruments as technicians. And the job of that is to reveal the art. The job of the technology is to reveal the art. The job of the artist is to reveal what's inherent in the culture. And when we are all aligned, then I think we, as technicians, we really serve the purpose of art, and we serve the function of art, and we allow the technology to serve the function of the art as well, and everything becomes harmonious in what we're trying to express. And this is kind of what we're tasked with as technicians. And tasks like this, we're kind of building, I had to build an instrument, a technological instrument that didn't exist. So I had to think about what will I need to press? I need to press a button and this has to happen. And these delays need to go, and maybe I just need to catch one word sometimes. So I had to find some kind of technology that allows me to be completely flexible in whatever kind of requests might come my way, so that I can reveal what it is that they're trying to express deeper. And many of the engineers I worked with, they said, this is not possible, you can't do this, you have latency, you have plugins, there's all these things. And I just didn't believe them. And I already had said yes. So I sat in the hotel room trying many things, and I found like a $30 program that did everything I needed to do. Apple makes it, it's called MainStage. It's completely accessible, it's very easy to use. It has all the basic features you need for implementation of some kind of effects, any kind of functions of a console of audio, any kind of button you can imagine, slider, data output, data input. So I thought, okay, this is a great place to start. So we started building the effects in here, and it became something that was completely useful for me. But then I had tons of bugs. I had the Apple people, I had to work with them, and they kind of were like, yeah, we didn't really design it for this kind of use, so sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. So they had to work around a lot of bugs and get these kind of system developed. And I guess I can show you some of the system now so you can have a better understanding. It's quite simple, and I think in the spirit of education, maybe everybody can understand how accessible this really is. Sometimes we think these things are so far away and they're inaccessible because we use them for famous people, or we have some kind of expertise. And like, I never even graduated high school. So many people speaking about education and how to implement education, and I don't know that that's always the most important thing. Like, if you can give somebody the tools and they have the inspiration and they have the desire to do a good job and they care, most importantly that they care, and they are allowed the space to figure it out, they probably will. I'm not sure that the education mattered more. Like, when I found out you can go to college for sound, I decided to go. But not one person in my whole career has ever asked me for my college degree. Nobody has ever asked me for those things. But what it did was it kind of gave me like the courage for me to think that I know something. And I didn't really know shit. But there were some people along the way that they saw my passion and they saw my care, and they gave me opportunities where I would be able to fail, but I didn't, and it worked. And then that carried on, but it just takes one or two people like Freddie to give somebody an opportunity to fail, because probably they won't if they care. But we need to give them the opportunity and allow that it's safe to fail. And it's safe to fail, and that you can learn, and it's okay. And you don't need to know everything. You don't have to be educated. You have to care. I think more than anything, you have to care, be willing to say yes, and then show up and figure it out. Those things, I think, are just as important, if not important, than knowing something. So I think you can maybe put that on the computer. I'll put the computer on the screen. Perfect. And I'll just use this system now. You can mute this. Okay, so in this system here, it's very simple. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Logic, but Apple bought Logic some time ago, and this is basically the mixing features of Logic. So you have some kind of mixing features and the ability for me to host plugins. So what was asked, the task that was asked is that, like, why can't we have the same sounds we have in the studio? Why is that so foreign and so impossible for the engineers to come up with on the spot? Well, one problem is that the engineers have no clue what decisions and what plugins and what sounds went into the recording engineer's process or the mixing engineer's process that gave the final sound that everybody determines is what's going to become a record. The live engineers and the people who are in the studio never usually have a dialogue about that stuff. So it was first important for me to develop a good relationship with the engineer that was the person who crafted the sounds, because there's an artistry in his approach that was so helpful for me to understand and to implement it into a live ecosystem. Because sometimes we have to take the compression out, or we have to reimagine the EQ, or we have to change the distortion, or problems arise that we need to fix them with solutions in here that we never even thought about, but we can understand the direction that the engineer was heading, where his process was, and what his goals were, so that we can try to arrive at the same space in a live environment. So that was the ultimate goal, was to arrive in that kind of space. So in here, I'm able to just take mixing console features. So I would go on a base layer here. This base layer is just my I/O. So I determine how much I/O I'm going to have. I'm going to need one microphone input. I have a spare input. I have a guest input. I have my effects out. My effects have a monitor bus. I don't know if you can see right here. There's a monitor bus, and that monitor bus goes to the monitor engineer, which is 5 dB less than the house. So he doesn't need it so loud. Sometimes the effects, they get in the way of the artist hearing pitch and things like this. So here's a monitor dry out and a monitor effects out, so they can blend them as they need or take away the effects completely if they need so. But I can't listen to all of that and make all those decisions in the moment. I have to listen from the audience perspective and make those decisions. And then we have our main out, which is our front of house out. This is just a first layer that determines what's coming in, what's coming out. A metronome shows up, and I always have to turn it down because you can't get rid of it. That's one of the bugs that happen. So this is just my base little layer. I thought, okay, so I can have signal flow happening in and out. And then over here I have my effects. You can turn this one off. So when I go to my base layer, it's dry, it's just a dry send. And normally I have a control surface because I need to make decisions in the moment. You know, during the show, the performance is not always the same. The words we try to strive for the same thing, but it's a creative process. So the artist changes, or the words change, or they'll give extra hey, or sometimes something will get delayed, and I'll catch her like vibing on the delay, and then I realize, oh, we have to have a little dance here because she's expecting that to happen again. Hey, and then she, oh, that sounded cool, and she would go for it again, and then you realize, okay, we're going in a new direction that was unexpected. So I had to use a control surface, and there's not many control surfaces that even are designed for these kind of purposes. They're built. Especially things that give you fader movements, they're built to work with Pro Tools, or they're built for some system very specifically that they respond to. So finding a really generic controller was another task that was difficult. I ended up using like a really simple Behringer controller because it was really basic. It gave me the fader positions and it allowed me just to understand where my movements were in the moment. So what I ended up doing was, in this layout here, in the performance, so I can I can make any kind of instrument I want here. So these faders, these represent the faders of my console that I would use the hardware. I just tried to mimic my hardware. So I made 8 faders here. I have one master fader you can see kind of down the bottom. My CPU load reflects if I'm using too much data. These 2 knobs I needed for some certain performances of effects that we needed to do real-time changes. And then I put like the set list, so I'll put our show set list on the left here, and then I'll put the lyrics too, because I can't study Beyonce lyrics, or I don't know all the words, but I need to, so like I just put them there because I'm gonna forget them. So another way of using technology to get past the boundary that I know lies within me. And I just highlight the words, okay, these are the words, those words in blue is what I gotta throw. So it comes to this word, and I will use, hey, okay. So in my throw here, it comes to these words, Illuminati mess. To throw little words I'll throw. So the highlighted words is a reminder for me, like that's the word you gotta throw. That's what needs to have an echo. And I have a little throw fader that's always the one that's active and that I need to be listening for, and the one I need to be doing my movements with. Other things here is like which signal is coming in. You can see the microphone here. Sometimes I have to switch to another microphone, and that lets me know what indicator is happening in the moment. Then there's my monitor effects, and I have my monitor dry. And then I just have my set list here, so I can, in this moment I can go through the set list, and no problem. Next song, next song, next song. And some of these things, they allow me to go real time. You know, you change the song, okay, change the song, everything's changed. All the plugins different, everything we need in one instant. There's no software I was able to find to allow me to do these kind of things. But now this creates a sort of instrument. It's an instrument where I can do any of these kind of tasks in the moment. Okay, we want to change it up, no problem. I save it during rehearsals, and when we did the Grammys, I didn't get any rehearsals. I had no rehearsal time with her. Our only rehearsal time was the performance, the dress rehearsal for the performance. So I had to be really confident that everything was going to work. And it did, but we had to thoroughly go through having background singers sing, or having me, myself, just sing the songs and be confident that everything's going to work in the moment. Let's see what else we can do. This thing we had to make, okay, can you make a sound that sounds like something melts at the end? We will melt it. So we make, hey. We didn't end up using it. But in a half a day, we were able to, I want to make this kind of sound. And in a half a day, we had the instrument designed so that we can execute it, implement it, and test it out. In the end, the song got trashed, but the system will allow for these immediate changes to be made, for me to save all my history of everything. I have a folder down here that has all my old versions, or the things that I'm not using in the show. So if all of a sudden we need to do a certain song performance, if we need to do a certain song or performance, then I have it ready. And we just drag it in, and it's ready to go. And I'm confident that it's going to work because I've combed through everything we use in the performances.
This was something that we had to do.
For Coachella, one big task was like, okay, we have to turn the pitch down. And like, I didn't realize how difficult of a task that is. Because the human voice has these things called formants. It's like our vowel sounds. And any plugin that I could find that takes the pitch down an octave and also took the vowel sounds down where it was clarity and you can understand it, had so much delay. It was unusable. So I spent probably, a week of time just searching plugins that didn't have latency. And I found one small plugin that these people did, and
And you use this when you can see it in real time. There's no delay. Everything's pitched down and no delay. So this one was a big task for our Coachella performance.
That's scary, Carl.
And then I like to push the boundaries of things, so I started just to design these systems because in my spiritual practice, we have part of our practice is just singing the names of God. So I thought like, wow, I can do my craft and my spiritual practice at the same time by just putting effects on so I can make myself sing. I don't know how to sing, I don't know pitch, I don't know anything, but I know all these tools that I help all these other artists fix all the problems with themselves. So I thought, well, I can use this in my own spiritual practice and hone my craft even further. So I started to use this Kima system. This is a sound computation engine that you can do anything you can imagine with sound. If you can imagine it with sound, you can execute it in this Kima system. It doesn't do anything by itself, and it's just kind of DSP processing, and it has a lot of complex, see, they're like these little modules that have functions, and combining these modules and these functions together will give us some kind of sonic result. So I'm really interested in pushing these boundaries, and I just thought maybe I would bring this along because it's something I'm exploring now that I think is really contemporary and really different in its sonic qualities and abilities. And is anybody here, does anybody here ever want to sing and they don't think they can? Anybody? Yeah, so somebody come here. Who doesn't mind being embarrassed? Come, anybody. Yeah? Okay. Go ahead, play.
I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. Think about it every night and day. Spread my wings and fly away. I believe I can soar. Say right to the open door. Oh yeah, I can see.
And then I started thinking like, wow, you know, like, beyond just making a system for Beyonce, like, I started, I have a spiritual teacher, his name is Ram Dass, and he's 88 years old, and he's dying, he's at the last stage of his life, which is why I didn't come to South Africa when Beyonce came. I thought it was more important to spend some time with him when I have the opportunity to. And he teaches us such simple things, like living in the truth of things, and seeing individuals as a soul, and serving each other, and feeding each other, and taking care of each other. And I always had this disconnect with my spirituality and the fact that I work in pop music. And sometimes I sit in a stadium of 80,000 people and I think like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Why am I spending my time doing this kind of thing? And sometimes my heart doesn't feel like it's in it. And after talking with him about this, he was saying, once you mix your creativity with your spirit, wow. And I thought like, yeah, how am I going to do that? So I started to think, well, I can do creativity as a service. Because creativity, what we're doing as technicians is ultimately we're serving the creative force in whoever it is that's on stage. But I don't think that the creative force is limited to people that are on stage. I think that's, like he said, it's fundamental. Like culture and art is fundamental to culture. Well, I think the creative force is fundamental to humanity. And I think that we can serve that. That's the technician's job, and that's the roadie's job, and that's all of our skills is to ultimately to serve the creative force and to reveal that in anybody. So I thought, like, well, I can use these tools that I make for these pop stars and serve the creative force in anybody. So I started to just get individuals who maybe they don't think that they could sing, or that they want to sing, and they have no opportunity, have no ability to do any of that, and just giving them all the skills I have to see maybe what would happen if we served the creative force inside them. And I did one project in Brazil with a person, and it got to the point where it became a product, you know, it turned into a product. And at that point I left and I gave her everything, but what I realized and what I learned from that is that she transformed as a being because she had the opportunity to be heard. And then the creative force inside of her was alive. And I thought, this is a much more important thing for us to share, especially in the kind of context of here, where you have a culture that hasn't been taken care of and hasn't given all the tools it needs to fully express itself. But the creative force is so alive in the people here. And when I came here to be with Freddie, it was 12 years ago now, I didn't know what apartheid was. I quit high school in 10th grade. I don't know anything about the history of the world. But like there I was, experiencing these people who had no opportunity to learn. And I didn't think that this kind of thing existed in the world. When I saw Freddie, I thought like, wow, it's so much more important that we spend our energy here because I've been privileged to be around things to where I can accomplish my dreams. And I didn't have those things as a child. I didn't have a family or parents or anybody that supported any of my art forms or any of my career. But I had like something inside me that always had to push forward. And I think that's sometimes the best use of our skills is integrating with others who don't think they have a skill, or they don't think they have an opportunity, or they have some kind of fear or something that holds them back to give that, to allow them to be heard and to serve the creative force inside of them. Because sometimes just that little bit of energy that we spend with them, the little bit of time. I saw two people here, right here being one of them, that they were here 12 years ago, and we still have this dialogue, and I see their motivation hasn't changed, and their skill level has grown, and the only thing that happened was Freddie gave them an opportunity. Freddie listened to them and gave them an opportunity to be heard, and gave them an opportunity to express their form of the creative force inside themselves as some sort of service to creativity itself. And that's something I'm going to talk about more tomorrow, unpack it a lot more. But I think it was something very important to mention, that what we're really doing here is serving the creative force. And given the opportunity to fail, I think most people won't. If they have cared for what they're doing, operate with kindness, and do it with truth and love.
Sure.
And I think that's more important than even what it is that I'm doing here technically, you know.